Welcome to It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that are very important to making that history, and as it is today, some that are making history this very day. And we're so very excited as we bring you the first segment of our Hispanic Heritage Month. Now, September the 16th is a very important Independence Day, and all of our people that are culturally motivated really celebrate that along with your speaker. And we're just so pleased to bring you our history tape number 526, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. And we have a very special young lady from the city of Grand Prairie, Texas, on the dais today. And Kathleen Martinez Cook.
Thank you so much.
I am delighted to welcome you to the dais today, my dear.
Why, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor.
Oh, we're just so excited about you today because you're the first when we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. We usually begin it around the 16th, and this won't be shown until our next week, which is about the 21st, a couple of days late. But we know that everyone's going to be so excited to really learn about the real Kathleen.
Why, thank you very much.
And so we'd like, first of all, for you to tell us about your beginnings, where you were born, and name your parents, including your mother's maiden name, and then we'll get to maybe some siblings or go from there.
Well, of course. I am Kathleen Martinez Cook, and I was born in 1961 in Oakland, California.
Oakland,
California. And my mother is Dorothy Martinez, and my dad is Ted Theodore White. And so it was an interracial marriage from the beginning.
Isn't that exciting for you?
Yes, it was. Yes, it's very exciting for all of us. Growing up in the 60s, my mother didn't speak a lot of Spanish. Now, my grandmother spoke a lot of Spanish to us. But my mother, growing up in the 40s and the 50s in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is where all of her family is from. Growing up in those days, you had to speak English and you had to enunciate correctly and blend in with the culture.
And what was her maiden name?
Martinez.
Okay.
And she married, and his last name was White. So a lot of times people would say, well, you don't look white. And I would say, no, I'm not. So I had a lot of people in school that would sometimes didn't really like the White last name, but Martinez fit me really well.
Perfectly.
Yes, and I have I have three younger brothers, one that's just a year younger than me, and then some that are 13 and 11 years difference. And so I have three nieces and two nephews.
Well, do any of these live in the Grand Prairie area or even in Texas?
Well, my dad and mom moved here. We moved all over the country. We've lived in Oakland, California, Sacramento, California. We've lived in Bethany, Oklahoma. We did most of our time in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where all of my mother's family is. And then we moved to Texas in 1975.
And what did your dad do for a living?
He worked in radio control airplanes and model airplanes, and there's this little box that the radio controls work with, and that's what he did. And he came to Brownsville, Texas, as a matter of fact. We lived down in Brownsville for a while, and then they moved the company up here to Irving, Texas. And we lived in Hearst. And then a few years later, my parents moved to Bedford, where they're still living. There in Bedford. My brothers, one brother lives in Watauga, and I have a brother who lives in Arlington, and actually two of my brothers live in Arlington, and I reside in the city of Euless.
In the city of Euless. Now, let's get back to your first experience in an elementary school. Where did you begin school?
I began in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
In Albuquerque?
I went to a private school, a Catholic school.
Oh, good.
So I felt very comfortable there, and the nuns, all those stories about the nuns are true.
They made you really take the mark.
Yes, we did, and when we moved in fourth grade, we moved to Oklahoma. And I went into public school, and there was a big difference between private and public schools, even back in the 60s.
When you were in Albuquerque and in the Blessed Catholic School, tell me about your experience. Was there any one of the nuns or any one of your instructors that really impressed you, that you even remember their name?
Well, I don't believe I remembered any of their names. I always know that I was fearful of Mother Superior,
Yes.
who was the principal
Yes.
of what we call today. And anytime you went to go visit her, you just knew that you were in big trouble. It was a very quiet school.
Do you know the name?
No, I surely don't.
That's all right. And then we went to Oklahoma.
Then we went to Oklahoma and spent a couple of years there.
And your elementary school there was what name?
It was Putnam City.
Putnam City.
Putnam City Elementary School.
And that was the 4th grade?
That was the 4th through 6th grade. And I really had the only memory I have of Putnam City was back in the days with Karen Carpenter and my choir class, and we used to love to mimic the Carpenter songs. That was so much fun. I can remember that.
Beautiful music.
Yes, it was. And so Oklahoma City, I remember the tornadoes, being fearful of those, and having a couple of the drills in school where you had to go hide in the hallways or down into the basement. But
Any special teachers to your memory?
No, I
No?
can't. No, and I don't really remember a lot of my teachers because we moved so much. Because from Oklahoma we moved to Sacramento, California, where I spent another 2.5 years in the Sacramento. I went to Foothills Junior High.
Had you developed any patterns in your study that would lead you toward your career that you now have, or did you have any favorite subjects then, or?
No, and that's one of the things that I've impressed to my children. I have 3 boys. I have Corey, who's 18, and Casey's 15, and Kelsey's 12.
Yes.
And all through their studies, that's what I've impressed upon, was that whatever you enjoy, whatever you feel your passion is, whatever class comes the easiest to you, that you actually receive some benefit from it, that's probably where your interest will lie as you become an adult. And so mine was government, and actually it was accounting and math. I was very good in accounting and math, and I loved my government classes.
And government classes. And all of this in Oklahoma, and then on back to California.
On back to California, and then back here we end up in Texas. And so Texas,
where did you graduate from high school?
I graduated from Trinity High School in Euless in 1979.
In Euless? That is wonderful. So you're almost a hometown girl here.
Yes, I am. So I don't have a lot of
Metroplex.
memories of when I was a little kid because we moved so much around, but I have great memories of here in the Euless and the Metroplex, Arlington, Grand Prairie, back when the cities were a lot smaller than they are today.
Now Euless, when did you move into Euless?
In 1970, probably 77.
77. And what grade and what school?
That's where I went to Trinity High School in 10th
That's
grade.
Trinity, in 10th.
And graduated, and then I did
What year?
In 1979.
79. Now, I'd like to know, in high school, were there any special interests? Did you sing in the choir? Were you in the pep squad? Did you do?
Well,
what
we
were
had the
you?
pep squad, and I also was in the student council, which I didn't know that I would end up being in government back then, but I loved student council. Absolutely, just found it so much fun, and we did so many programs for the kids in the schools. And I never dreamed that I would one day become a public servant. It just, you don't correlate the two, but you just realize that's what your passion is. And that's one of the things that I try and tell my children all the time, you know, where are you having the most fun? Because no one ever said that to me. You know, my parents were a great support, and my grandmother, she was a very strong and independent woman.
Name your grandmother.
Kathleen.
Oh, you're
named after her.
Named for the grandmother.
I'm named after my grandmother. So I didn't take on Kathleen until I became an adult and after she passed away. I was always Kathy. But then, because I never felt I filled those shoes until much, much later after she had passed away. And so she was my mentor. You know, you talked about mentors.
Yes, we need to know that.
She was an independent woman and worked until she died at 79. She ran a mobile home park in Oakland, California, just outside of San Francisco. And up until the day she died, she was running that park. And just very independent, very, very smart, very well educated. And she was really my mentor. Coming from the background that my mom came from, the Hispanic background, you know, back in the 50s, women were to to finish high school and get married
That's
and
it.
have their children.
That was it.
And that
No
was
career
it.
pattern.
No career. My mother never really had a career whatsoever. She did drive the carts at the airport, and we always laughed at her because she was always one of those annoying people that would say, "Excuse the cart, please." But she was never really encouraging. I really had strong support from my grandmother, and I got married at a very young age, at 19, and went to junior college. It was called Tarrant County Junior College at the time.
Yes.
But I think they've dropped the junior part
Yeah.
out of it. And so I went there for a couple of years and started in the private sector in an insurance company.
Majoring in what?
Accounting.
Just in accounting. Already in the junior college level.
At accounting, and then decided I think I'm going to make a little bit more money in this private sector than finishing school. Big mistake, which I think a lot of people do, because you just, it's hard to balance having a new marriage and trying to go to school and then trying to just start off in a business.
Yes.
In the business world.
How about the insurance business? What led you in that direction?
Well, it was actually, I worked for the property management company that owned the building.
Oh, great.
And so I was doing their books and their records there, and then went on to downtown Dallas, where I became their accounting manager. So you slowly move up, but I always felt like I don't need college. I'll just come through the company and work my way up. Well, it took 10 years to move up to accounting manager level.
And all this time you had babies?
All this time I had 2 children, and it just kind of went back part-time.
Yeah.
And then after I had my second one, I realized I really do want to stay home with my children.
Yes.
You know, they're the most important thing. So then I got home with the children, and it was too much.
Yes.
It's a lot to be a full-time mom.
Yes, it is.
It's a lot of work. So I went back to school part-time. And I went
where
back.
did you go then?
Junior college. I
Back
went
to-
back to Tarrant County
Back
Junior
to
College.
Tarrant County. That's been a very important station in your life,
Yes,
hasn't it?
it has.
Special professors, special people that really encouraged you, even though you were going part-time, maybe at night.
I would go
anyone.
during the day, and my
Yeah.
mom and my mother-in-law watched my 2 little babies for me while I went to school. And I just went back 2 days a week. I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to balance, you know, being a wife, children, and being active in there, making sure that there was care for them, and then going back and getting back into the mainstream with students who were, I was, 10, 15 years older than them at the time.
And you had to manage your house too. You had to
Yes.
do laundry. You had to do all of the prepare meals for the babies to leave for someone else.
Right.
That was a very, very tough schedule, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, but I managed. I kind of thrive on just being busy all the time, and decided to go back to school. And I just went back 2 days a week, and then I decided I was going to go on to a major college.
Oh dear.
Once I decided what I really wanted to do,
What made you get to that point? Here's what I want to do. Did you make up your mind? Did someone encourage you to do that?
I believe that in the city of Euless and in all communities, and that's why I do love working for Grand Prairie, is that I want to make a difference. And at first I thought, well, I could go back into the private sector and then run for council, as you do, because my what drives me is wanting to make a difference for a community.
Yes.
And so then as I was going back at the junior college level, I took a government class. And I
Now
loved
you
it.
finally found your
So
niche.
I found
didn't
my
you?
niche. I loved that class. It was easy. And then I decided, well, what can you do with a government background? You know, how can I make a living with a government background, and realize that I would do public administration, where you actually now don't work for the private sector, you go work for a city.
Yes.
And so that's when I made the decision that, okay, I'll give up my dream of being a council member, and now I'll go work for a city and make a difference.
Yes.
And at the state level, you can't see those differences that you make. At the federal level, you would never see
You
it.
get lost in the shuffle,
You
wouldn't you?
just get lost. But there is no other place to make a difference in your community other than working directly for the city or some other nonprofit group, where you can actually see things come to fruition. And you know that we have a lot of projects that go on in the city that you know that your work is making a difference for the residents here.
Who helped you make up your mind what advanced university you would attend and why?
My neighbor. My neighbor moved in, and we saw him outside and, introduced ourselves and said, what do you do for a living? He said, well, I'm coming down from up north, and I am the new city manager of Colleyville.
Of Colleyville.
Of Colleyville. So I thought, you know, this is...
That is fate coming
That's
together
fate
with
coming
your government.
together.
With your government.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So that's when I decided to go up to UNT. They have a wonderful political science public administration program up there. And I went up to UNT.
You are the Mean Green.
Yes, we are the Mean Green.
You and Rick
Harold.
Rick Harold are Mean Greens. Oh my.
Yes, we are. So I finished up my undergraduate, and then I applied for a scholarship, which is one of my most proud moments as well.
Yeah.
A scholarship with the North Texas Council of Governments, which we work very closely with.
Yes, that's COG.
COG, and I became a COG Fellow for Minority Women. So I got a scholarship, and
Yes.
it brought me wonderful opportunities. It was a full ride to graduate school. I didn't pay for any books. It paid for books. It paid for parking. It allowed me to get into professional associations that we all have, city managers associations, all kinds of new groups getting involved.
All kinds of benefits, yes.
And then it also paid the city. I went to go work for cities for 20 hours. So I was juggling a family plus a newborn. I had a third child in between just as I finished undergraduate school and managing a home, and then now I put 20 hours of work on top of that.
Yes.
So I went to work for the city of Colleyville.
Yes.
And I worked to my neighbor next door. My neighbor eventually had to go live in the city of Colleyville, but as he was transitioning, I got to know him very well, so I went and worked with him
Would
for a
you
little
like
bit.
to name that person?
You know, I just don't even remember. It was Bob something or other,
Yes.
but you know,
It was Mr.
had
Bob
a
that lived
different.
next door.
Mr. Bob who lived next door. He had a strange last name, and you know, I can't think of his name right now. But
wasn't it wonderful that he was a mentor too?
Yes.
Helped you up a step that you didn't realize.
I thought it was fate, actually.
Yes.
And then worked for the city of Fort Worth and graduated.
What took you to Fort Worth?
One of the girls that was in the program with me said, come to Fort Worth. It's a
What
bigger
department?
city. I worked in it was for the city manager's office, and we
Okay.
did special projects.
Yes.
And actually we were looking at, it was kind of a quasi-audit department where they come in and they look at how you're running your
Yes.
operations,
Great.
and that's what we did.
Then after Fort Worth, what?
After Fort Worth, I graduated with my master's in public administration in 1997. Then I went to work for the city of Dallas.
For the city of Dallas.
For the city of Dallas.
What did you do at Dallas, and who took you to Dallas?
Another gentleman that was in my graduate class was already working there, and he said, you need to come over here because I think the experience that you're going to get from this is going to be something that you'll have for the rest of your life. And the politics and the things that I learned.
Mercy.
And the strength that it took to stay there 2.5 years, I certainly grew from that and took all of those, at the time I felt were negative things that were happening as positives, and they just made me a better person when I came here to Grand Prairie.
So after Dallas, what brought you from Dallas to Grand Prairie?
Well, I wanted to get closer to, you know, the commute from Euless to Dallas is
and you were still in Euless,
still
residing
in
there.
Euless. I just wanted something a little closer to home, and something that I could just, if I needed to go home for lunch or if I had a school function for the kids, I could get back a lot quicker. And then I needed to go to a smaller city. Dallas I didn't feel like was my place.
Yes.
And Grand Prairie, you know, we used to
You came on board at Grand Prairie, and who was the city manager who hired
In
you?
1999, I came on board in April, and Mr. Hart had just started.
Yes.
And Mr. Hart and I go back a ways, but we never really knew how our lives were going to finally touch. But
Yes.
when Mr. Hart was the city manager of Euless,
Yes.
I had to do a couple of projects. And guess who I interviewed?
You interviewed Mr. Hart.
I interviewed Mr. Hart.
And now he's interviewed you on the Heart to Heart show,
Yes,
right?
he has.
He
It's
paid you
kind of,
back.
he paid me back. He helped me out with a couple of my projects that we were doing.
Yes.
And I never dreamed that I would be working for him
One day.
one day in Grand Prairie.
Yes.
So that
Because
was
he was at Euless then.
because he was at Euless then, and we just kind of touched, and then come to find out our boys played rec soccer together, and I coached his son on a couple of games. When the coach wasn't there, I was assistant coach, and didn't even know that was Mr. Hart's son. So it was
Yeah.
a small world.
Yes.
So we have boys that are the same age, and then I come over here to Euless. I knew he had moved here. Shortly before I had applied for a position over here, I'd come over here as just a budget analyst.
You came to Grand Prairie as a budget analyst.
Budget analyst.
Who was over the budget
At
department
the time,
that time?
Rodney Rhodes was the director,
Yes.
and well, he was the manager, and Kathy Stroop was the
Yes.
director of over budget at that time. They've since gone through a reorg,
Yes.
and Rodney could see my talents.
Yes.
Right away, and we reorged that position to make it a senior analyst, and then Mr. Rhodes left. I guess I was only on the job 9 months, and he
Yes.
left. And I asked Miss Dahl if I could be the interim, and I don't think she was all that crazy about it, but she talked to Mr. Hart, and Mr. Hart knew me and said, why not? So I became the interim budget director, and I knew that this was going to be my job.
Yes, you knew that already.
Yes.
You,
So
you had prepared for it, hadn't you?
Yes, I did.
It
So-
didn't just happen. I want the boys and girls to know it just didn't happen.
No, I was already 37 years old, so I was pretty old, but I had a drive knowing what I'd learned, that going to college is just a must.
Yes.
An education
Is a must.
is a must. And as a Hispanic woman, getting those scholarships is what allowed me to move quicker than I would have had I not had the scholarship. I wouldn't have had all those opportunities given to me in a scholarship. So I tell my boys that that's fine, you're going to finish high school, but college is what your end result is going to be, and we're still working that out.
Corey is 18. What is
Corey's
he doing?
18. He's a senior at Colleyville Heritage High School.
Okay.
And we're working on scholarships.
His plan?
Well, for an 18-year-old, his plan was to find a college that was close to a ski slope, because
I
he
see.
loves snowboarding. And, you know, that's kind of hard to, you just kind of let them
Pinpoint.
talk those things through.
Yes.
And so first it was Colorado, because we love Colorado, but then it was Oregon, and now we're going to do probably a state school in Texas somewhere.
Wonderful. Praise the Lord for that. And how about Casey?
Casey is a freshman at Colleyville Heritage.
Okay.
He is 6'2" and 170 pounds. So he's got hopefully a nice little basketball working
Excellent.
for him. But he knows that he's going to have to work hard, and he wants to be an attorney.
Excellent.
And my oldest wants to be a doctor. by the
Oh,
way.
a doctor. Okay.
Yes.
All right, now let's get to Kelsey.
Kelsey, oh, he is a terrible twos that never grew out of terrible twos. So
Still,
he's a terrible 12-year-old.
Even though he's 12, he's still in.
Oh, he's the
baby.
He's the baby, and he thinks he's 18.
Yes.
And he's in 6th grade, and he goes to Heritage Middle School there in Colleyville.
That's wonderful. That's been a good life for you. Now, what do you want to do when you grow up?
I'd like to. I think I'd like to do be an assistant deputy city manager somewhere. Being a city manager is a huge task and requires you to move to a lot of places.
But
And
deputy city manager, that's reasonable, isn't
that's
it?
reasonable. I can still do that and be a mom.
Yes.
So that's really where my priorities lie, is just get that 12-year-old into college, and then I'm going to worry about the rest of my life. I just got to get that my youngest in college and get him successful, and then I can think about exactly what.
And we know you're going to have to continue to live in Euless because the boys are in school.
Yes,
How
they
about
are.
your commute here every day? Is
It's
that a hassle?
It's an easy 20-minute commute on 360, and I love it.
Yes.
Absolutely love it.
Not-
It's no traffic. I'm going against traffic down 360, and then it's just.
You're coming the right direction at the right time,
Yes,
aren't
I
you?
am. Also, we're able to do a lot of work. I do a lot of work from home. Now, and we didn't used to have that flexibility, but with the internet and the wireless coming on board, it gives us plenty of opportunity to do a lot of work from home, which is really nice.
Yes.
So as the kids were doing homework last night, I was working, and instead of actually being in the office, I was able to work from home, which makes it so much easier on working parents.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now, how do you manage the PTA and all of their activities, their ball games and all of this?
The weekends.
The weekend.
The weekends, we play baseball, we play soccer, we do hockey. We've done ice hockey for the very first time this past year. And that was unique, where we were used to being outdoors and in the heat. Now we went inside to play hockey, and my 15-year-old broke his collarbone. So That was a new experience too.
That
So they
was a
keep
new
us very busy, and their dad is wonderful. He really, really does his part to split the time up as far as getting, okay, I'll drop one off, you pick one up. So, and then, plus our oldest is now driving, so that makes it a lot
The older
easier.
is driving. That makes a difference, doesn't it? Now, as far as you're concerned, Deputy City Manager could be in the offing some of these days, but what do you do for hobbies?
For hobbies, we do snowboarding. We do a lot of family activities.
Personally, what do you do?
Personally, what do I do?
What are your favorites?
Well, when the kids go snowboarding, which I love the mountains and the cold, I will stay home and read a good book, or cross point or needle point. I eventually my grandmother tried to teach me to crochet forever,
Yes.
and she crocheted the neatest little slippers for the kids, and now that she's gone, someone
You
needs
treasure
to do
those.
that.
Yes,
Someone
you-
needs, so
Do you still have your mother?
no, my mom passed away. As a matter of fact, she'll be gone a year on Monday, so we miss her dearly.
Yes, so do the boys have other grandparents?
No,
They do
we
not.
have. Well, my dad is just the only one left. Their dad's mom and dad passed away several years ago. So,
Okay. Now, I would like for you to look out to Richard, and in about a minute and a half, just encourage the boys and girls that may watch our show how important it is for them to be successful, that it takes a lot of go with it.
okay, I just want to say that getting an education is so important. You know, you learn from your parents' experiences, and if your parents tell you, you know, take the easy route, they really mean it. I started out going to college and then ended up not finishing that. So you go back to college, get your education, look for those scholarships, find out how you can bring back to your community. I think that's one of the most important things that I ask any child. I'll ask them, so what are you going to do with the rest of your life? How are you going to make a difference? Make a difference. That's what I want to tell everybody, make a difference, because just the littlest things that you can do for your community, volunteering, cleaning up roadways, planting flowers, picking up trash. My son actually had to serve on a jury for kids because he got a speeding ticket. You know, that's how you give back to the community. Become a juror, do whatever you can to give back to the community and find your passion, and whatever that passion is, pursue that passion and you'll be successful in anything that you do.
Well, we're so thankful that you're in Grand Prairie, even though you live in Euless. I think you've adopted Grand Prairie as your second city because you give so much to it. And I know that there's many ways that you give back to Euless through the boys in their schools and through the activities that you have there. But we want to thank you for all of the good things you do for us. And on a personal note, thank you for all you do in making the budget process so much more tolerable, I'll put it that way, as my grandmother would say, because it's just been really wonderful to sit at your feet and to know that you know what you're doing, and that we've never asked you a question that you didn't have not only an answer, but you had the right answer. And Mr. Hart is very, very lucky, and I'm so glad that your lives were entwined, even though you didn't plan it that way.
That's right.
And that you got to come to Grand Prairie, Texas.
Well, thank you. It's always been an honor to serve you.
Yes, and thank you, Miss Kathleen.
Thanks.
We appreciate you, and thank you so very much for being the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month that we're beginning in 2004. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do and document everything.